going on here?
Let's face it, this is not the worst thing you've caught me doing.
That clip you just saw was from Iron Man, starring Robert Downey Jr., a very talented actor. Now, that's how most people know him, from superhero movies. But there is another side to this very diverse man, and that's the side we're going to be focusing on today. Robert Downey Jr. was born April 4th, 1965 in New York City. Downey was raised in a very artistic family in Greenwich Village, New York. His father was an underground filmmaker. Robert started acting at a very early age, around 5 years old. Growing up, he had several supporting roles in teen movies like Weird Science and Back to School. He also was on the sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live for a couple seasons. He kept acting through the 80s in movies like The Pickup Artist, a very good role as a cocaine addict in the critically acclaimed movie Less Than Zero. He was also nominated in 1992 for his role as Charlie Chaplin in the movie Chaplin, but by this time his Hollywood acting work had been overshadowed by his substance abuse issues. And despite his incredible acting ability, his frequent skirmishes with the law and his public struggles with addiction took center stage over that acting. In 1999, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for having violated parole from an earlier arrest. And in 2000, he was granted an early release. Now, during this time, he was able to still work. He won a Golden Globe Award for his appearance on the show Ally McBeal. But his drug problems and his arrest caused him more and more problems that took away from this acting. In 2003, he did seem to turn his life around. His popularity in movies grew until, of course, in 2008, he became Iron Man, and we all know the rest from there. He was also in a great movie called Tropic Thunder, which he was nominated for an Academy Award for. And his roles as Sherlock Holmes, which he was also had won a Golden Globe Award for. But let's focus on the addiction side of this story. In 2003, what happened that changed his life and turned him into this Hollywood superstar that we know from a blacklisted actor? Robert Downey Jr. was introduced to drugs at a very early age in his life. He had an really complicated relationship with his father, Robert Downey Sr., who was actually the one that introduced his son to drugs and continued to do drugs with him. Now, from 1996 through 2001, Robert Downey Jr. was arrested numerous times on an array of charges that showed his issues with addiction. And his arrest began to stack up. He started missing court dates and missing his court-ordered drug tests. And that's what ultimately got him sentenced to prison. Now, he did spend over a year in prison before getting early released. But his trouble continued. In 2001, after being released from prison, he was found barefoot walking around Culver City, California, obviously intoxicated, and was arrested on more charges of being under the influence of alcohol, and was then fired from his TV role on Ally McBeal. And this is when he was blacklisted from Hollywood. No companies would hire him anymore. Broke and back in trouble, he got a break and actually got sentenced to a rehab instead of back to prison. So this is where his life starts to change a little bit. He started to get some help for his problems. He was able to get back to work. In 2003, he was on the set of this movie called Gothica. And this is where he met this person that would actually change his life. Her name was Susan Levine. She was also working on the movie as well. And through her first encounter with him, she said that she thought he was a very odd, weird person who she could never see ever being involved with. Now, she had never had a problem with addiction. She never knew anyone up to that point that was struggling with an alcohol or a drug problem. And she didn't think that her and Robert Downey Jr. would ever be a match for each other. She came from such a clean-cut and structured background. But her influence did end up rubbing off on him in a very good way. They fell in love, but she gave him an ultimatum. If they were going to stay together, he had to make the decision to stop drinking and doing drugs. And in July of 2003, Robert Downey Jr. made a fateful decision. He pulled into this Burger King on the Pacific Coast Highway and threw all of his drugs into the ocean. And he has never looked back since. He picked his relationship and the love of his life over his addiction issues. Robert Downey Jr. did have another woman in his life prior to Susan Levine. Her name was Sarah Jessica Parker. And they were together for 7 years. And she had to leave him because of his lifestyle and his crazy behavior. And she said that she just prayed that he wasn't going to kill himself or die, but she had to save herself from him. And Robert Downey Jr. has also had his own family tragedies. His own son, Indio, back in 2014, was arrested on possession charges. And after bailing his son out, he said that he was actually grateful for the sheriff's department for what they did because it was an intervention into his son's life and brought light into what was going on with his son. He checked his son into a drug rehab, and so far his son hasn't gotten into any legal problems since then. Now, this is a nice story. This is a very inspirational story that this man of this much wealth and fame can actually so far down and be able to come back from that, to be an inspiration to other people. It doesn't matter how far you slip, that you can come back from it. And this man lost everything. Being blacklisted in Hollywood and being labeled that way is probably an extremely difficult thing to come back from, being that publicly humiliated. But this man, Robert Downey Jr., did this, and he did it because he had that inner drive to do it, but also because he had a good support system around him. He had people around him that helped him, that cared about him. And that helped him immensely in turning his life around. And good people who weren't going to take any shit either. Good people who practiced tough love with him and kept him in line, but also laying down the law and sticking by him through those hard times. And we can all take a page from the life of Robert Downey Jr. and his recovery and use it in our life. Hard work and don't give up. Keep moving forward. All of us have setbacks. All of us have our trials and tribulations. But if you keep continuing forward, small steps at a time, and don't overwhelm yourself, allow yourself to start to change, but do it in a very slow and gradual way. I've been doing what I'm doing now for over a year and a half. And I learned at the beginning that you can't pile on too much stuff. You can't take on too many things. You gradually have to start and start slowly, but you can do it. We can do it together. And just understand that because something happens to you that is negative, it doesn't mean that you can't overcome it. In recovery, we're all going to have setbacks. Just because you made the decision to stop drinking doesn't mean that life is going to just all of a sudden become rosy and nice and sunshine every day. And there's going to be days that you're going to miss the alcohol. There's going to be days that you wish that you had a drink, and those are the times that you have to see into the future. And that's what I would do. I would look at a future version of myself and say, I want to become better. I want to become that person that I have in my thoughts and in my vision of myself. And that's what got me through a lot of these difficult times. And also having a good support group. I have a really good family structure, and they are behind me. My work structure is also behind me. I have people who care about me and who aren't going to lead me down the wrong path. But you are the one that ultimately has to make those decisions. And you have to be able to put your foot down and get busy and stop feeling sorry for yourself. Stop being one of those weak people who is spineless and always wants to blame other people. Don't do that. Don't waste your time with that kind of behavior. Change your life for the better. Take a page from Robert Downey Jr. And we can all do that too. We can become Iron Men and women.
I am Iron Man.
Okay? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Remember, know thyself.